to do monthly professional development for teachers on a wide variety of topics. So tonight we're going to be talking a little bit about some real experience for educators. I believe the name of the workshop was called Job Shadowing for Teachers, and we're definitely going to talk about job shadowing and its importance tonight. But we're also going to talk about why real experience is important for educators and how do we get there. So, I'm going to go ahead and dive right on into the workshop. Following the workshop, I will be sure to send each of you a completion certificate so that you can use it for professional development hours. This workshop is worth 1 hour of professional development, so I will be sure to pass that along. The workshop is also recorded, so you can go back and replay it. It will be available at our website in just a couple of days as well, too. So let's jump right in and go ahead and get started. So I always like to start out with a question. And my question for tonight is what makes an effective educator? And you guys can utilize the chat if you want to send your responses in the chat. I also sent this question out to hundreds of teachers prior to preparing this workshop because I love to get feedback from teachers and hear from you guys. So those of you that are in the workshop, feel free to participate in the chat. I would love to hear from you. What you think makes an effective educator. So a few things that some of the teachers I reached out to said is someone who makes an effective educator is someone who cares about their students. I totally agree with that statement. That is so true. There has to be some type of connection between the educator and their students. Someone else said that an effective educator is someone who knows their content. I think that's definitely important that we have content knowledge about whatever it is that we are trying to educate students about. Another teacher said an effective educator is someone who can reach unreachable students. I so much love that. That's true. If you can reach those students that are sometimes deemed unreachable, I definitely believe that you are an effective educator. And then lastly, I had another teacher say that an effective educator is someone who builds relationships with students. I completely believe that everything that these teachers said is 100% true when it comes to effective education. We're going to talk about a couple of other things that make educators effective. So I want to leave you guys with this. I don't want to leave you because I'm not leaving you just yet. But I want to drop this statistic here. 81% of dropouts say that relevant real-world learning opportunities would have kept them in high school. That is a pretty amazing statistic. That's a really high number, 81%. And they say that relevant and real-world learning opportunities would have saved them from dropping out. That is worth talking about. So I believe that an effective educator is someone who is real, relevant, and relatable. So how do we get there? How do we as educators become real, relevant, and relatable? Those are three key points that we're really going to talk about tonight. And hopefully you guys will walk away from this workshop with some tips and tricks and new ideas to really become that real, relatable, and relevant teacher. So, how do we do it? Well, this is how we do it. And my music isn't playing. Oh, I wish you guys could hear my music. Here we go. This is how we do it. So this is how we do it. This is how we become real, relevant, and relatable. In case you guys haven't noticed, I really love music and I really love 90s rap. So we're going to stop, collaborate, and listen. We're going to talk about each one of these key elements. Stop, collaborate, and listen. Much thanks to Vanilla Ice for giving us that wonderful saying that we can use tonight to help us remember how we can become more effective teachers. So stop. What do we have to stop as teachers? I think about now in this world that we live in, it is so hard for us to stop as educators, right? We are being pulled in so many different directions, from administrators, from parents, from students. It's really difficult for us to stop. We don't have time to stop. But just like with anything, it is so incredibly important for us to really stop and assess our situations, right? So in this moment, we're going to stop and we're going to assess our current situation. And what I want you guys to really think about is we as educators have to stop preparing students for standardized tests. Am I right? I think we can all jump on board with this one. It is not effective as educators for us to simply prepare students for a test, right? Because many times with a test, such as a standardized test, it's really based on recall and memorization, right? It's not really assessing the whole student. So number one, we have to stop preparing students for standardized tests. I think we could all jump on board with that one. Number two, we have to stop preparing students for college. Ooh, that's a hard one, right? Because college is pushed so much on high school students. And we all know, we can look around our classrooms. In every single one of our classrooms, we can see that our students are completely different. We know that as educators because we are with those students every single day. We know that those students have different skills, different talents, different abilities. They're all different, and not all students need to go to college. There are so many different career paths out there that do not require college. Maybe they require technical training or some type of certification or simply experience, right? So we have to stop preparing students for college. Stop preparing them for the ACT, for the SATs, whatever standardized test that your district decides to implement this year. We have to stop preparing them for that, which means we have to start preparing them for life. If we think about our overall purpose as educators, what is our overall purpose? Our overall purpose is to prepare students for life after high school. Now, what that life is going to look like after high school is going to be very different for every single student that sits in our classroom, right? We know that. And so we have to think about what are some things that we can do as educators to fulfill that purpose. Preparing them for standardized tests, preparing them for college is not doing that. We are not doing our students justice if that's what we're preparing them for. We have to prepare them for life, whatever that may look like. Okay. So we have to stop. We have to assess where we're currently at. We have to stop preparing them for tests, stop preparing them for college, and start preparing them for life. Okay. So we've talked about stop. Now let's talk about how we can prepare them for life, right? So 3 things that we have to do. Number 1 is we have to consider our course content. So what I want you guys to do, if you have a pen, if you have a paper close by, I want you to consider what are the key concepts, the important skills, and the state standards, maybe the national standards that you teach in your class. Okay, so each one of us may all teach different content areas. You might teach geometry. You might teach marketing. You might teach engineering. You might teach algebra or English. Whatever it is, I want you to really think about what your course content is. Consider what it is that you are required to teach in your classroom. Okay, so I challenge you right now or over the next couple of days to really take inventory of what those key concepts, those skills, and those state standards are. I want you to think about what are those main things, if you look at your class as a whole, that if you can get your students to understand and really gain that knowledge or that skill or that concept, that you would be really proud of them, or that you would feel like you've accomplished something for the school year, right? Because we all know, let's be honest and let's live in reality here. We all know that our students are not going to grasp and learn and take away every little thing that you teach in your class. But what are those key concepts? What are those important skills or those standards that you teach that if your students grab those and understood those, that you would feel like, okay, we have accomplished something this year. So I want you to really take inventory of that. I want you to make a list and consider, what are those key concepts? And you might have 6 different preps. You might have 1 prep, but I want you to do that for each one of your classes, each one of your courses that you offer. I really want you to take inventory of what those key concepts are, what those important skills are. Okay, that's important. The reason it is important is because once you have made that list, now I want you to identify. I want you to identify the industries that regularly use these key concepts, important skills, and state standards. So once you have your list, your inventory for each course that you teach or each class that you offer, once you have that inventory, I want you to take that list and do some research. Okay. We as educators have to continuously learn all the time. That's why you're here, right? That is why you're here tonight, is because I know that you guys like to continuously learn. An effective educator does continuously learn. And so once you have that list, I want you to do some research and truly identify what industries. And there's a list of, you can find all kinds of lists of industries that are out there available. There might be 10 or 15, but I want you to really think about what industries utilize the concepts that you teach in your class. So for example, if you teach geometry, the industries that use geometry on a regular basis might be things like construction or design or engineering. If you teach marketing, some industry, tons of industries use marketing, right? But some examples might be the entertainment industry, real estate, the food and beverage industry, hospitality, right? So really think about the key concepts you teach and what industries utilize those. Another example, if you teach accounting, goodness, every industry needs an accountant, right? So that might be the sports industry, or manufacturing, or transportation. And then, of course, if you teach chemistry, it might be something like the beauty industry, or obviously pharmaceuticals or agriculture. I guarantee as you do this research and you start diving in to what industries use the key concepts that you were teaching in your class, you will be completely surprised, right? I know for me, I'm all the time discovering different industries and different career paths that I literally had no idea existed, right? And so it's important for us as educators to, number one, be aware and be knowledgeable about the opportunities that are out there for our students, right? Because every single industry, no matter what industry is out there, they're hurting for employees right now. Yep, we are in an employee shortage along with everything else. I feel like we're in a shortage of everything. But those industries, every single industry out there is hurting for employees, for good employees. And so it's important for us as educators to know what industries are out there that utilize the concepts that teach in our classroom so that we can impart that knowledge on students. Okay, so first we have to consider our key concepts. Then we have to identify what industries regularly use those key concepts. And then lastly, we have to we have to discover careers within those industries. Okay. So once we've identified the industries, then we have to dig a little bit deeper. We have to dive in deeper and truly discover a multitude of careers out there that, for example, if you teach geometry and you have a student that is great in geometry, but he or she might be thinking to herself, like, I don't want to grow up and be a mathematician. I don't want to grow up and teach geometry, right? Because that's so many times students think like, why are we learning these concepts? Like, how am I going to use this in real life? Right? We don't need to know this. We're never going to use algebra again. We've heard these things, right? We've heard in our classroom, students ask us questions such as, why do we have to learn this? Sometimes it's hard as educators to know the answer to that, right? Because we as adults know that there's so many concepts that we learned in high school that we don't currently use as an adult. So it might be hard for us to answer those questions. But if we are armed with knowledge of industries and careers that utilize the key concepts we are teaching, we can answer those questions for our students, right? This is how we make it real. This is how we make it relatable and relevant to our students. Okay. Students are going to be more motivated to learn the content, to absorb the content, to understand the content if it is real and relatable and relevant to their future, right? So we have to be armed with that knowledge of industries and careers out there, career paths that maybe, just maybe, students have never considered pursuing simply because they don't know it's an option. I think about all the time, me as an adult, there's so many different career paths out there that I'm like, man, if I would have known about that as a student in high school, I probably would have chosen a different path. Right? Knowledge is so important. Allowing students to really see opportunities that are available out there is such a key aspect of us as educators preparing them for life. So we have to discover careers that use the concepts we teach on a regular basis. So a couple of examples for you guys. If you teach geometry, animators, surveyors, architects, interior designers, plumbers, mechanical engineers. I could go on and on. And a lot of those careers are things that students would never think about needing geometry for. Then we think about accounting. I mentioned earlier, every single engineer or every single industry needs an accountant. Every single business has to have an accountant. So everything from sports teams, you think about NFL or MLB, every single one of those sports teams has not just one accountant, but a team of accountants. That's incredible knowledge that students should know. If you teach accounting and you have students that are bored out of their mind with debits and credits, let them know that, hey, if you are good at this and you love sports, there's a career out there for you that would allow you to literally attend every single, Tennessee Titans game or, Pittsburgh Steelers or whatever sports team they love. And if they're good at accounting, that could be a perfect fit for them. So we have to be able to be relevant, be relatable, make sure that the students understand there are opportunities out there for them to utilize the concepts that you are teaching in the class in their future, right? Then we think about chemistry. I feel like chemistry, there's so many that students don't consider. They think, I don't want to be a scientist, or I don't want to, be a pharmacist or whatever. But if you have a student that loves makeup, maybe you have a student that just loves makeup, cosmetic chemists make tons of money, right? Who puts together the formula for mascara or shampoo or foundation? These are real career paths that I guarantee students have no idea exist. Or maybe they love farming. Do you have students that maybe have a farm? Agriculture is a huge industry and career path that needs chemists for water treatment and crop protection, and so many different careers within the agriculture industry that students may have never considered before. So do your research, consider your content, whatever your content is that you are teaching, consider what it is, make a list of those key standards, those key points, identify industries that use those standards, those key concepts that you are teaching, and then discover careers within those industries, right? And once you make that relevant to students, then they get excited. Then they want to dig in. Okay, so we've stopped. Now it is time to collaborate. Okay, so collaborating with industry professionals. This is where we're going to get into talking about the job shadowing and how we can relate all of this information. I just realized I spelled collaborate wrong, I believe. Yeah, okay. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. It looks wrong. Anyways, we're human, right? We all make mistakes. I'll have to go back and look that up. It looks wrong, but I've looked at it for a while. So anyways, so collaborate with industry professionals. First thing we have to do is network. We're going to talk more about that. Second thing is ask. This is a tiny little word that could mean all the difference. The next is immerse. Okay, we have to immerse ourselves. Okay, so first let's talk about networking. Networking means that we as educators have to get outside of the classroom. We have to get outside of the education industry, even if that means we have to connect virtually. Why is that important for educators? So remember, we said this workshop is all about real experience for educators. Why is that important? Well, the whole thing is you guys have to have the experience, the knowledge to know what content that you are teaching, how that relates to their life after high school, right? That is the epitome of what we are talking about, because so many times teachers will graduate from high school, they'll go straight to college, they'll get their education degree, and then go right back to the classroom. And they don't have experience outside of the education industry. And that can be a problem sometimes, right? Because we might have a teacher that is teaching chemistry, but has never actually used chemistry in the real world. So when students ask, why is this important? It's hard for that teacher to answer that question. So job shadowing, real experience, networking is so important for educators. We expect our students to job shadow, right? We expect our students to go out and get experience, whether it be through volunteering or networking or whatever that might be. But we as educators have to do that exact same thing. So you may be thinking, well, I live in a very rural community and I don't know anybody that works in the sports industry, or we don't have a professional sports team in our community, or I would love to be able to network with someone in entertainment or music, but that's just not available in our community. Well, that's not really an excuse, because this virtual world that we live in gives us so many opportunities to network outside of our community. So utilizing things like LinkedIn, if you don't have a LinkedIn account, definitely set you up a LinkedIn profile and start reaching out to industry professionals that work in the industries that you listed based on the content that you teach. You have to connect with industry professionals that work in those industries day in and day out, using the concepts that you teach in the classroom. Why is that important? Because knowing and building relationships with those industry professionals will help you to become a more effective teacher, because then you can make it real, relevant, and relatable to students. The content that you teach, the more you expand your knowledge about the industries that use the content you teach, the more effective that you will be. So what is networking? Networking means you have to meet new people, right? You have to connect with people that maybe you've never talked to before. That can be kind of scary. You know, sometimes as us as educators, we might be shy people. This is probably outside of the comfort zone, because usually in education, we're not required to attend networking events or, to reach out into the community. We might have to talk to parents and students on a regular basis, but reaching out into our communities outside of the education world can sometimes be a little intimidating, but we expect our students to step outside of their comfort zone. So I'm going to encourage you guys to step outside of your comfort zone, connect with people in the industries that you made a list of based on the content. So after you connect with them, the next thing is simple. All you have to do is ask. Well, you might be thinking, what do you ask? That depends on what you want to achieve. I will tell you this, industry professionals want to be involved in your students' education. Why do you think that is? Well, it's because these industries, again, are hurting for good employees. And so they want to be involved in that educational process of young people, right? They want to be involved in education. Not only does networking help you to expand knowledge about opportunities in the industry, but it also gives opportunities for your students to build relationships with those industry professionals. So what should you ask? Maybe you should ask for opportunities for you to job shadow, not for your students to job shadow, but for you as an educator to job shadow. So we're expected as educators to attend conferences and get professional development and attend workshops just like this so that we can get new teaching methods and new ed tech and all of these different things. But we as educators should also be required to get experience in the content area in which you're teaching, right? And so maybe that is through job shadowing or volunteering, or even simply interviewing industry professionals that work using the content that you teach on a regular basis. So after you network with these industry professionals, let's say you teach geometry, right? You teach geometry. I know I keep going back to that one, but it's an easy example to use. If you teach geometry and you reach out and network with a construction company in your community, and you meet some of their employees, maybe you meet the foreman, and what do you ask? Maybe you ask to spend a day on a job site, watching and seeing and observing how the employees of that construction company regularly use geometry, right? And so once you observe that in real life, or maybe they would allow you to work for a day, maybe a day in the life of a construction worker or an architect, or a day in the life of, a healthcare worker. I'm sure there's definitely some COVID guidelines that we would have to work around in this day and age that you live in. But it's so important for us as educators to see the concepts that we teach in action, in real life, every single day. So seeing that, observing that, and then being able to take it back to the classroom. I guarantee if you just simply ask, at the very least, they would be more than happy to do an interview with you where you could ask them questions about, how do you use geometry concepts? What are some daily tasks that you do using geometry? Or what are some daily tasks that you do using marketing concepts? And so just getting to know about their daily responsibilities, about, their daily activities, things that they do on a regular basis, will help you be more informed as an educator and be able to pass that knowledge on to your students. Remember, our job to be an effective educator is to make it real, relevant, and relatable for our students. We have to do that with the content that we teach. Our purpose is to prepare them for life after high school. And the best way to prepare them is to make sure they are make sure they're aware of all the opportunities that are out there using their skills, talents, and abilities. So we have to collaborate with industry professionals. That means we have to network. We have to meet them. Number one, we have to simply ask them to be a part of whatever project or whatever, industry that they're working in. And we have to immerse ourselves into that industry. We have to immerse ourselves into those career paths so that we can get that real experience as educators that will make us a more effective educator in the classroom. Okay, so we have to collaborate with industry professionals. You might be thinking like, I don't know how to network. How do you even meet these people? Sometimes it's simple as a cold call or a cold email. Finding out a key person you want to meet and just shooting them an email and telling them, you're an educator and you're interested in learning more about what they do so that you can pass that information on to your students. Maybe it means that you attend monthly Chamber of Commerce meetings. Think about the Chamber of Commerce that's in your community. You can go to their website and see a full directory of every single business that's a member of the Chamber of Commerce. That's a great way to network, is attending those monthly meetings. Looking for networking opportunities in your community. Chances are there may be a young professionals group that has monthly meetings where you can network, or even the conferences that you attend. Look for the conferences that are in your community or virtual conferences, and make a point to step outside of your comfort zone and meet people that are in those industries that use the concepts that you teach on a regular basis. Okay, so we've stopped, we've collaborated. Now let's listen. We as educators have to listen to our students. This is so important for us to be effective educators. We have to listen to our students. How do we do that? Well, we do that by involving them in our planning process. So when you think about a new semester, maybe you have a new set of students, or maybe it's a new year, really talking to your students, getting to know your students, and finding out what is it that they want to get out of the class, right? What concepts are important to them? Because that list of concepts that we made, a couple of slides back, where we're analyzing and taking inventory of the concepts we teach, that may not be what's important to our students. We know that generations are changing. This generation of students that we are teaching is going to be completely different than any other generation before them. One of the biggest reasons is because they've lived through a pandemic, right? And so what's important to them is not going to be what's important to the next generation or the generation before them. So really listening to students and understanding, what are their interests? What are their future plans? How can we make the information we gain from students really put into place in our classroom? How can we develop lessons and learning opportunities and opportunities for them to, gain and get experience in careers that they're interested in? How do we do that? Well, we have to involve them in the planning process. We also do that by simply asking questions. We can sit down and we can ask questions of our students, like, what industries interest you the most? Maybe they're interested in healthcare. Maybe they're interested in construction. Maybe they're interested in the entertainment industry. Chances are, whatever industry that they mention that they are interested in, you can pull out key concepts that are relatable in that industry for them. Right? And so we have to get to know our students at the very beginning of any semester. I think that goes without saying, but are you asking them the right questions? Maybe finding out what skills or talents that they currently possess. Maybe you ask them questions about what careers they want to pursue. We may think that the content that we're teaching is relevant to them, but we don't know until we ask them questions and we truly get to know them. That is literally the only way that we can prepare students for life after high school. By getting to know your students, by listening to your students and understanding what opportunities, what career paths, what content they are interested in learning. And listen, I know I'm an educator. I know we have apathetic kids. Apathy is such a huge problem in the education world today. I know that. But if we can figure out ways to make it relevant, real, and relatable, we have to do that with our content. We can truly become more effective educators. Now, I know that I left this statistic for you at the beginning, but I think it goes without, or it's worth saying again. 81% of high school dropouts say that relevant real-world learning opportunities would have kept them in high school. You guys, we as educators are not able to provide these relevant real-world learning opportunities until we as educators have gotten real experience in industries outside of education, right? If we graduated high school and went straight to college and then right back into the classroom, we don't have experience in the industries that we're trying to educate students about. So it's important for us as educators to take the time, and while we are doing this professional development, to really take the time to go out, immerse yourself in the industries that utilize the concepts that you teach. And there's a ton of them, right? Maybe take an hour each week or each month to get experience in a different industry that uses the concepts you teach. If you teach English and you're teaching, grammar or writing assignments or whatever it might be, you get experience in press release writing, right? Or journalism or whatever it is, identifying these different industries, these different career paths, setting aside time each week or each month for you as an educator to gain real experience. We know that job shadowing is important for students, but job shadowing is so important for educators and teachers as well. And even if you can go a step further than job shadowing and get real experience through volunteering, maybe working alongside industry professionals, that's even better, right? But at the very least, can we just interview them? Can we just interview the industry professionals and ask questions? That alone will help us to become more effective educators. So I want to leave you guys with my contact information. This is my email address. Please feel free to reach out to me anytime. I will be sure to send along your completion certification certificate so that you can get that hour of professional development. Please check out Reach and Teach. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on LinkedIn. Definitely check out our website. We have tons of free resources for teachers and for students available on our website. No strings attached. Completely free. Thank you so much for joining me, and definitely check back to see what we have available in the months to come. You guys have a great evening. See ya.